Hello. Welcome to the JTM Community Podcast, where we are building a community that you can bank on. I'm your host, Jason Melvin. If you are watching this, you already know who our guest and frequent co-host at this point is here. If you are listening to this, we'll get to that in just a moment. Of course, if you want to touch base with me for advancement advising, you can do so at j-tm.community. If you want podcast stuff specifically, just add a /podcast to that. All the social media links are on the top right-hand side. Of course, if you enjoy our content, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. You can also do very similar things on various platforms such as Spotify as well. Follow and you'll get notifications when new episodes go live. Without further ado, our friend, that's fair too. I was going to say our teacher, but in some ways you definitely are that. A teacher who is indulging my desire to have many conversations during this summer because he has a little bit more time on his hands, as y'all can imagine. So you all voted, and today's topics we're actually going to be doing two back-to-back. So if you watch the next episode also, our clothes may actually look very, very similar. So
I'm gonna go change.
Just to throw people off.
Yep.
So this topic is actually the topic of disappointment, which y'all had voted for. There's a lot of things that can go with disappointment. I was given some significant thought to that today, and my brain went in a whole lot of ways. So when you hear that word, Will Squires, what does disappointment mean to you?
Well, it goes right. I honestly just jumped straight to my horrible self-image, like view of myself, and go, okay. Yeah, me. I'm a disappointment. But no, disappointment to me looks like not living up to what you expected yourself to, not meeting goals that you wanted to meet, not reaching certain places. I kind of step away from the disappointment of other people because of the fact that you can't help what other people feel about you. So, and you can't always mold your life about, what people want your life to look like. So it's all, when I think of disappointment, it's all about your goals, your situations, and either not reaching them or not fulfilling what you feel you are capable of, or possibly getting to.
So it's kind of like it's an aspect of like a self-perception. When I think of disappointment, so yours in my view, though I can completely understand what you're saying, and I believe probably most people view it that way, both internally as well as how they can view other people. And maybe I've just approached my life different or have understood things differently. And I don't mean this in any like cocky kind of way, because I'm not perfect and I fail all the time. I would argue that I never fail because I don't view not achieving a specific result as a failure. I view it as that attempt helped me learn, and I'll do it better the next time and the next time and the next time and the next time.
So you take failure as a learning opportunity.
Yep.
And that's kind of where I was going. It's just, disappointment is when you stop.
Yes.
It's that stopping point of like, no, you're just kind of giving up and saying, I can't do it anymore.
Yep.
That's the disappointment part, because you're going to fail in life. That's what life is all about, and you learn from that. But the disappointment, you're supposed to. But the disappointment part comes when you don't learn and make changes based on the lessons you've been taught through life and through the goals that you've been chasing. So
yeah, I think for the most part, I don't have like any sense of disappointment, and I'm trying to think, and I'm sure there have been moments. A general idea of disappointment for like myself is if I do a thing, I make a mistake, I acknowledge it, I know it, and then at some point in the future, I make that same mistake. only in the context that I control all variables. So a lot of people will think of the idea of like a relationship, right? You can't control the other person, right? The other variable. So you can choose to trust someone and have your feelings hurt, or like some adverse sensation, and then you trust another person in the future and a similar thing happen, and to be disappointed in yourself is a little silly. However, if you met the person in a similar context, right? So if you meet a person and you know that things are unwell and you choose to dive in and you get your feelings hurt and then you do that again, that'd be like jumping in a pool of sharks and being disappointed that you got bit.
Yeah, but I agree in half the sense, because
go ahead.
Not every person is exactly the same. So might be the situations might be similar, but like you said, you can't control the context. So one person might be, if it's relationally, one person might be different in temperament or exercising habits, or there's differences the situations can be similar in terms of okay, this person's not to their full capacity right now, and you're jumping in with baggage, but it's all gonna be different situational. So
I love the hope that is within that mindset. What I'm saying, I guess, would be more so of I befriend a thief and I get hurt because they stole from me, and then I knowingly befriend another thief, right? And then get disappointed that they stole from me. That's what I'm saying. So
I get that.
You can put like whatever context, but absolutely everyone is different.
Yeah.
When I think of disappointment, I also think of two other aspects, because at first I was like, hey, no, like my brain was treating it as very black and white. And then I began to realize it's a complete spectrum. So if I have an expectation of a thing, which I've done the work to try to never have an expectation now, which that doesn't mean the expectation is low. It just means that the expectation doesn't exist. Doesn't mean I don't have hope. So in the past, when I would have an expectation and that wasn't met, then there would be a significant sensation of disappointment. So now I will do the work for an ideal outcome, and I will hope for that outcome, but the hope and the expectation are not one and the same.
So you hold them separately.
Yep. Well, I try not to hold expectation, period.
Okay.
But I'll hope for a thing, which there's still some disappointment, but it's not the impact of like having an expectation where this thing should happen versus I would like this thing to happen. So I'll use my family as an example. In the past, I would have had like this, the idea of you invest and they invest, right? And that was kind of like a mutual expectation. So when things wouldn't happen, it would be hurtful. Now I understand that I hope that things will happen and there will be engagement. I will throw things out there. I will do the work, right? But I don't expect it to be so.
Right.
And if my history would be an indicator of anything, it should be that I would expect less than what my hope actually is, right? And I'm not trying to trash or shit on anyone as much as using that as an indicator of those two things for me, right? So I can hope that we hang out.
Yes.
Right. But if I have the expectation, I feel like an expectation is like this idea of I deserve this thing, right? This thing to happen versus I would like this thing to happen.
Yeah, in that sense, I don't see a whole lot of difference. I'm starting to see where you're coming from.
Sure.
But I think with hope there is, unless you train yourself like you've done.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
It would. Most people, and I'm going to say most because most people, a lot of people do not train themselves to do it like you have. A lot of people do not train themselves to split the expectations, to compartmentalize things. They keep them all together where there's hope, there's expectation. And you see a lot of disappointment come out from people with that, because you see people wanting to, like you were just talking about, hanging out with friends. The hope is that you're going to hang out with this person who has said, yes, I'm your friend. We want to do things together. We want to do this. We want to do that. And the expectation falls through. You make plans and then they cancel and cancel and cancel, or everything's just so busy that you don't make time or can't make time.
Yep.
And there's disappointment from that. So I think for the average person who hasn't trained themselves to do what you've done and compartmentalize those two and separate them, where there is hope, there is expectation. And where there is expectation and there is lack of follow through, there is disappointment. So I don't know. I always go back to Pandora's box, because you look at all of this stuff that goes on. Pandora was given this box, told not to open it, and all of a sudden, all these things come out, right? And that's where the world supposedly got hate, greed, cats, because they're from the devil. And
he's awesome. Sorry,
I know he is.
He was whining, and I didn't want him to be on the recording.
But you get, Pandora opens this box and all these bad things come out of the world, but there's that hope that's left there. But you still have disappointment in the world. Just because you have hope of something doesn't mean that you're not going to be disappointed. And it's sad to see. It's very amazing to me, and I need to ask you more about it, like how you went through training your brain to do that. And I think that would be good for you to share with a lot of people, but
sure,
the average person in this world does not train themselves that way. So
that it has to come with tolerance. And I agree with what you're saying. And please don't for a second think that when I separate the two, that hope comes without its discomfort, right?
No.
So it still feels bad when your hope doesn't come to a fruition. And I mean realistic hope. Like, I don't hope to win the lottery, right? Like, that's not, would it be cool? Absolutely. That would be awesome. But that's not a realistic hope that I have.
But that's what a lot of people do. They put all of this hope and all of this wishing and all of this, oh my God, everything will change. And then they stop doing other things to make things better for themselves. And then when they don't win that, $940 million, they're sitting there going, well, no, I can't do this and buy a boat. Well, yeah, of course, work harder. And it's, understand that it's a very slim chance that you are going to win that. If you do, great. But you can't put all of your eggs in one basket and hope, and then not be a little disappointed when somebody in Des Moines, Iowa, wins.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a tough part for me, because there is going to be disappointment in those cases, but there also has to be a certain level of understanding that you can't put everything on that hope. You have to have, and maybe it's me just being a little bit more cynical. You have to have backup plans for things like, okay, if this doesn't happen, I understand that this is a possibility, but you have to look at everything situationally and go, okay, here's what I hope will happen. What do I have to do to get there? If it doesn't, how do I go to something else and make the best of it? And that's like you segmenting off those two pieces. It's hard for people to do that as well, because they just want. So, which
I think is the difference, right? So hope for me implies realism versus like anyone ever hoping to win the lottery. I mean, honestly, hoping to win the lottery is naive. Wanting to win the lottery, absolutely. Like that's a thing, right? The difference between the expectation and the hope is as we're talking about this, what's coming to mind is the closer that something comes to being a tangible existence, the greater it probably sways for me from hope to a little more of an expectation. Though, again, I try never to create an expectation. I'll use this exact moment right now. So we were planning, we had a conversation. These are the topics. What day works for you, right? So as we walked through that process, and then today, and then at this particular time, right? So that becomes more of like an innate expectation. So if you were to have canceled and said, hey, no, right? So 40 minutes before we started, I shot you a text, hey, we're good to go in 40 minutes, right? So the closer that is to a tangible reality, the greater the expectation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sorry, not the greater the expectation, but the closer it becomes to an expectation, right? So I could hope to go on a cruise with you, which we've talked about over the years, right? The fact that it hasn't happened, it hasn't been hurtful. But now if you even agree without any plans, right, it's going to increase
that. It's going to bring that level up.
Yeah, so that level of hope. Okay, now we're working. And then if we actually started looking at days and times and shifts and all of those things, it would slowly, actually not even slowly, it would quickly work its way to that other side.
Right.
Now, if we committed and we put a down payment and like all those things, right, now it starts to create more of a sense of an expectation. And when those things happen, I feel like that is, in those moments, is where people expose themselves to greater disappointment. So the idea that a partner is going to respond a certain way, if you've done the groundwork, right, to realistically have that to be an expectation, and then it doesn't happen, right? So working with couples, which is my favorite, I love working with families and couples. What'll happen more often than not is they'll come in and usually say the same kind of things, right? They want to work on communication, like all of these things, which all of that means nothing, right? Because what communication is to one is usually not the same thing to the other. And I'll do a couple of exercises, a couple of trust exercises, not like a trust fall, but to get to a degree at which they are invested with their partner and how much their partner believes that they are invested in their partner.
Right.
And those things in the 11 years that I've done this, they never match ever. And I've seen them off by like 80% in the past. So what you believe you're doing, then you might say, I'm doing like 90% of this, but then your partner might say that you're only doing 40%. Well, what's the 50% discrepancy, right? So it'll be things like, someone wanting their partner to respond a certain kind of way or do a certain kind of thing. But as typically as we work through that, that's never communicated, right? It's an expectation that is held, but the work was never done for it to be realistic.
And this is where you see a whole lot of couples, either the guy or the gal or whomever, just going, I can't read your mind. Tell me what you want. It's almost like, I don't know. I think I've pulled this from the movie before, but I've never seen the full movie. I think it's like, tell me what you want. I think it's from the book or whatever, but tell me what you want. And nobody ever does that. And they come out with those like, oh, this is how I've always run my life.
Yep.
So, and we've talked about this before. When my wife and I first got married, she moved over from California, she didn't have a job over here for a bit. So she was working on the house, and she didn't have a whole lot of friends that were here because we hadn't started playing softball together in the co-ed groups and stuff. And I just kept on living my life. Like, I kept on doing all my sports and all this and all that. And she had a breakdown, literally a breakdown, where she was like, I need you to do this. And I said, well, you never told me. you expected me to just stop what I was doing and be here all the time, but I was never told this until this huge breakdown. And it was like now I know, so I can change it. But that expectation was never communicated to me. So I understand how that, and she was really disappointed with my actions, but
sure.
How am I supposed to change if we don't know?
I want to pick on you for a second with that example.
Yeah.
Because as I put myself in her shoes and your shoes, I saw things a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So she had the expectation that things would look a little different, that time would be more shared, if you will, right? You had the expectation, and both of you didn't communicate. You had the expectation that things were fine and that she would come to you if they weren't.
Yeah, because I mean that's
also
we'd always talked about. Yeah, we've always talked about that. Though, like, if you need something, tell me. And I was like, this is what we talked about. Tell me if you need something. Tell me. So it was kind of an interesting situation to get into because we were like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Just talk it out a little bit. I'm always yelling at movies, going, "Just talk to them."
Yeah.
You could end a TV show in 5 minutes if you talk to them instead of going, "Well, now I hate you." Well, why do you hate me?
Yep. That it doesn't. People communicating well doesn't lend well to a dramatic TV show.
To dramas, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But they use those in dramas and TV shows because you see that disappointment, that lack of communication, that just that situation that turns everything into like, why is this happening? Well, it could have all started with communication, but now there's disappointment, there's anger, there's rage, there's all these different things that sells, like you said. Yeah. So,
and yeah, for a lot of people, especially through like various moments or stages of their lives, it's very relatable.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At some point, someone's always been, we've all been disappointed at some point, whether it's with us or with other people. Can you think of a time that almost preemptively, where there was a sense of like looming disappointment that actually fueled you to change an action or a mindset?
I mean, off the top of my head, no. I mean, there was, if I'm thinking about it a little bit, there was a situation where I knew because of certain allocation reasons in the district that I was going to be, because sixth grade was getting moved up to middle school. I knew that there was going to be a change at the school that I was at. I knew I wasn't going to be able to teach in elementary school anymore, with sixth grade being the top of the group. And I was going to have to make a change, either stay in elementary school or go to middle school, which by all accounts, from what everybody's told me, you need to be a very special person to do that. So I don't know if I actually meet the requirements, but it's interesting. But I had a sense of that disappointment because I already preemptively knew that we were going to have to be moved. And so I was either going to have to pick another job, like go to another school to teach the grade level that I love, or I was going to have to teach material that I didn't like, but stay in a realm that I was comfortable with elementary school, because I'd only taught in elementary school unless I was long-term subbing and stuff like that, which was middle school, high school. But I felt more comfortable, more useful in elementary school. Sure. And I had, when I knew that was coming down, everybody's like, well, sixth grade's getting moved, and there's nothing I can do about it, but I'm sad that it's happening. I'm disappointed because I can't change it, but there's nothing I can do. So that's the one that I can feel off the top of my head, but it's kind of changed my whole mindset on these things, because like you were saying, you can't go into a situation expecting things to go a different way when you don't control all the variables. If you control all the variables, then, and you don't follow through with stuff, then yeah, there can be. But this was a disappointment of, I love all the people I'm working with. I love the school that I'm at. I don't want to go. It's disappointing.
It sounds like less disappoint, and please don't let me put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
It sounds less disappointing and more, this is going to sound like a perhaps too potent of a word, but grief. It's the idea of losing the thing that you enjoy, the grade, the staff, being in the school that is something that you enjoy. So the idea of not having that and having to go to a place that you're not as familiar or comfortable, or I don't want to use the word passion, but don't have the desire, hits a little different.
Maybe, but for me in that point, it felt like disappointment because I knew it was going to happen, and I wanted to stay. I wanted the best of both worlds. I wanted my grade level, and I wanted it to be an elementary school where I could teach people to be leaders at a young age, and I could still do that now. They're in middle school, but they're at the bottom of the rung instead of the top of the group.
Yeah.
But not. It didn't really feel like grief because, I mean, we've talked about grief before.
Sure.
And I know there's different levels and different, you know, sense of it, but it didn't feel like a sense of grief to me. It was just a sense of, well, damn, that sucks. And whenever I hear damn, that sucks, that's disappointment to me. It just kind of hits you differently because grief is like, I'm sad. This is just crap.
So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios, and just for clarity. So what is the emotion as you process this, just very quickly, that you believe you would feel in that moment, right? So because I'm trying to tweeze things. So that sensation of damn, that sucks, you feel like that's disappointment. So you have a friend and his wife and child get COVID. How do you feel? Damn, that sucks.
No, yeah. But so it's not a damn that sucks in a disappointment way. It's a damn that sucks and that just sucks.
So what's the emotion? Because sucks isn't an emotion.
And this is where my wife, who's like you know, has been studying to do like clinical social work, and you know, she always says, now what's the primary emotion? And I go, please just don't start talking about primary and secondary emotions because I don't know that crap.
I would say in that moment, your emotion is probably that of concern.
Okay, like, we can go with that because like
I hope everyone's okay.
Well, I do hope everybody's okay, but I know that you also can't stop people from getting sick. So it's like, and I can't stop people from dying, but I'm sad when people die. I'm sad when people get sick, but at a different level.
Yes.
I'm not grieving over people getting sick. I'm grieving over somebody dying. I'm not disappointed that somebody gets sick because they can't control it. I'm disappointed when, you know, I can't get to do something that I really wanted to.
So you can't go to the movies and you're sad or you're disappointed.
I'm disappointed. Yeah. Like if something all of us, like the movie theater closes, like you go to a restaurant that you really wanted to go to, and they, for some reason they say, oh, well, we're not seating people for an hour right now. Number one, you're angry. Number two, you're disappointed because you're like, I came here to spend my money and, you know, feed the economy. And now you're just like, you're not going to see people for an hour. I'm disappointed.
This is what I hear you saying. Tell me if this is bullshit. So in these examples, it's not an emotion. It's a combination of the two. Whether it is concern and disappointment, concern and sadness. And those are all on a spectrum as well. Right. So because grief, which you're right in the sense that when people hear that word, they typically think of like the loss of a loved one.
Loss of something, like the loss of something that you lose. It could be the loss of a material good, or and we've talked about this before. But yeah, grief is a stronger emotion than sadness.
Yeah,
I feel.
Yes. Yeah,
like you're never going to get it back. There's something that you've lost that you can never really get back. And then there's sadness where you really have like this sense of down, like don't want to do a lot of stuff, just want to think, and you feel bad for whomever or whatever has happened. But it's not grieving. So yeah, I think there's different, whichever way you want to go vertically, horizontally on the spectrum, or it could be a quadrant.
So perhaps all grief is sadness, but not all sadness is grief.
Like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. Yeah.
Right. So part of the experience of grief is a level of sadness, but you can also be sad and not have aspects of grief that go with that.
And you can be sad, but not, or you can be sad, but not disappointed, and disappointed, but not. I don't know. Yes.
I'm not trying to tell you how to feel. That's why I said, tell me if this is bullshit. That's really what I'm hearing from you, though, is that idea of there's like different situations and circumstances elicit multiple emotions. It's not just so when if it is just that idea of, oh, that sucks, that sounds like pure disappointment. If it's like, oh man, and then there's a sense of like not being able to get to do the thing, it's mild sadness with disappointment.
Well, like, so you use the reference of a friend whose wife and kid get sick, or they and their kid get sick. There's sadness because it's like, damn, it sucks. I want them to be okay and healthy.
Yeah. And you can
there's also that disappointment because you could have had plans or wanted to hang out with them at that time.
Yep.
And now you're just like disappointed because, like you were talking about, you can't stop people from getting sick. But if we planned that cruise and the week we were supposed to go on it, and with this world that we've gone into now with this COVID, you get that and you're kind of secluded for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So you would have to cancel that. And there's a big sense of sadness because we had this all planned, and disappointment because
the loss of the experience you didn't get to have.
Yeah. You didn't get to have the experience with the people that you wanted to, and it sucks.
Yeah. No,
damn, absolutely. It sucks.
That makes complete sense for sure. So when you think of disappointment, what do you feel like it's a bit of a two-parter. One, a skill, a mindset, or whatever that helps you deal with or battle it when it happens in life. And two, is there a way to go even further and use it to help fuel you to do better in life?
Oh, I think I'm going to answer the second question first.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's how you need it. So if it's okay, but I'm doing it that way because you asked me.
To do better in life?
So, to do better in life. I think anything that feels disappointment with that, wow, that sucks, with that that pure disappointment of, hey, here's what's going on, that should innately that should drive you already to change things, to make a change. I'm going to use sports for an example because I always use sport. I either use teaching or sports or whatever, because that's just who I am. When you are in the state championship and you lose the championship game, that's that multitude of emotions. It's sadness, it's disappointment, it's frustration. But that disappointment should fuel you. It should give you reason. It should give you purpose to go and work harder to make sure that doesn't happen again. Now, like we've talked about, you can't control all the variables to everything. So you can only control what you can do. And if you sucked during that game and weren't helped to win it, then you can look at it and go, here's what I need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen the next time. Whether it be, if it's basketball, working on your free throws, if you missed like a game time free throw shot, if it's playing better defense, which nobody does in the NBA anymore, whatever you want to think about, that is how you have to go about it and figure out what can you do to change what could have been the outcome for you, because you can't change how the people around you play. You can help them play better, but you cannot make them put the ball in the basket. You cannot make them catch the ball when you throw it to them. You can only put it in the right spot for them to catch it. We were, I'm going to use a real quick one again.
Yeah, go ahead.
My wife, Rachel, and I were talking yesterday on our way to her family's house, where we were talking about the women's national team for soccer. And we were saying they looked like they hadn't been able to finish in goals right now, like getting the ball in the back of the net. And she said, this is how they need to be able to do it. And it looks like literally the first goal that was scored, it looks like they went back. They saw the exact same thing she did. And they figured it out. They were disappointed in their last couple of performances, even though they won. They were not finishing the ball like they should have, because they're multiple time, World Cup champions, this women's national team. And they put the ball in the back of the net exactly the way she said that it needed to happen, because they probably saw the same things. We're not using our defense to cross the ball in, or our midfielders to cross the ball in well enough, and we're not finishing when we have good crosses. And yesterday they did it. So it should drive you and fuel you to make changes in your game. Not because I've talked so much on that, I forgot the first question.
You actually answered them both at the same time.
A little bit, but...
Oh, you definitely did. So this is what I heard you say, essentially, was two aspects. Is one, it takes a level of objective ownership, right? To actually own like your portion of it. Objective to say, this is my portion of it. I can't control these variables. I can't make my team members perform a certain way. I can help, and we can practice. We can do those things. Right. So the first is the mindset. It's the ownership and the willingness to be objective, but that has to be followed by action. So the action makes you better. The ownership of it, the objectiveness is what helps you absorb it in that moment. It's not just disappointment that sucks and now nothing happens. It's that sucks. Let's watch our footage. Oh, we could have done this, or I could have done that, or no, I had a trash game. Like I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, so I need to change those things.
It's not even just like the watching the footage and stuff, but after a full day of teaching, like I've gone a full day of teaching and then had an event after school, and then gone to play a softball game with my team. And maybe I've gone 2 for 4 when I normally go 3 for 4, 4 for 4. And even though we win the game, I still look at myself and I go, what could I have changed? I was disappointed with how I performed. Yes, we won, but we could have won even in a better fashion. We wouldn't have had it such a close game. If I would have just changed this and this, and then I go out and I find ways to work on it. I go to the gym and work more on my core to get more core power for swinging. I'll go out and hit more BP in batting practice. I'll go out and have people hit me fly balls so that I'm tracking the ball properly. So I'm catching it at a better place and I can, throw the ball in faster instead of having to plant differently. Just those certain things. And even in a win, you can be disappointed. And that's why I said at the beginning of this whole thing, when I think of disappointment, I think of myself, because I'm literally, and we've talked about this, self-critical of myself to the point of like very deep disappointment in myself of what I've done. Like I could have been teaching 4 years earlier, but I decided to, I wasn't getting, so I kind of was off on that. And I was disappointed in that. I could have done this differently, and I was disappointed that sports and life and just everything. And I always find these little places, and that's the bad stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line, and I think that's where we come back to the idea of what our expectations are, right? Which if I took how you view you and made you view somebody else the same way, you would refuse to do so. You would,
because it's not fair.
It's not realistic.
But for me, I feel it is, and that's where the disappointment comes from.
Yeah, but it's not. That's the thing. It's not. I'm not saying always, because that we can have realistic expectations. Right. Or perhaps it's just a mild tweak in how we frame it, right? So I don't have to be disappointed that I only did this good, to still want to strive to be even better, always wanting to be a better person than we are today. I think that's an awesome thing. And I hope it's something that we all carry and cherish for our whole life, right? I don't think there's a moment that any one person like arrives, like I've made it, I'm the best version of me, versus the idea of I'm a better version of me today than I was tomorrow or yesterday, right? That's the difference between the realistic expectation, right? Is that I get better, not that I get best.
Right.
So no, what you said makes sense. And I love that you highlight your own personal struggle of that self-expectation leading to repetitive disappointment, right? Because there's other people who would, if I placed them in your shoes and performed at that degree, would have been absolutely over the moon. I'll put myself in your shoes and perform as well as you did. And I'd be like, hell yeah, like I fucking nailed it, right? But you won't feel that way. You refuse to feel that way. Even, and you and I have gone back and forth on podcasts as well, of you as a teacher, you'll say shit like, that's the job. And I will respond with, no, it's not, because you know people who are just doing the job, right? Which is significantly less than what you're doing. So give yourself kudos, accept the gifts your students give you, whether it's a fucking apple or an invitation to a graduation or a game or
I can always do better. That's what's disappointing.
We can always do better. Even if you did all the things that you are thinking right now, you could still do better than that, right? It's almost like greed, right? People want a thing until they get it, and then they want more, and then they want more, right?
I'm just happy that I really don't care. I'm just really happy that it's not a money greed for me. It's more of I want to be a better person greed. It's like I always want to be better, want to be better. I'm never gonna end up being like an Elon Musk type of better, because like he's always pushing, and now he owns like half the world, whatever. But
you're greedy when it comes to self-improvement.
I am, and it sucks because it's not always on the docket. But
I truly love what you said, and specifically highlighting like there is a detrimental level of things when we get in them, especially if we're in a mood of like sadness or grief or depression, because then we hyper focus on the experiences of disappointment, where that can make things even so much worse. So to answer the question that I asked you, just briefly to wrap things up, because you did very, very well. For me, what has been helpful, and it's something that I've learned over recent years, became much more intentional actually just before COVID hit. So it's been probably about 3 years. The intentional experience of gratitude, with the understanding that gratitude is purely from within, and it's how we choose to experience a thing. So I've used this, I try to do it every day, whether it is physical pain, whether it's emotional or cognitive pain or discomfort, the loss of life. And I know it might sound weird to say, to apply a sense of gratitude within those moments, but it has helped me to understand things so much better and love beyond what I thought I was personally capable of. So if Tracy's dad having passed just a little over a year ago, and the understanding in that moment of being grateful for the time I got to spend with them, that I was in a position because of that mindset to be supportive, to be present, to be stable, right? To be able to provide certain things to different people, and to see the compassion and care in a very, very difficult moment. Now, had I not had that mindset or a similar one, right, I wouldn't have been able to experience it in that way or be as helpful. And I say helpful only because that's been relayed to me. Because your intention to help doesn't make you helpful, right? No. A lot of people have the intention to help, and it actually makes things worse. So I'm saying helpful because that's what's been relayed back to me, a sense of appreciation. So I would say that forcing yourself to have a grateful mind makes the ability to endure those. So, for example, I'll put me in your shoes and play in a ball game. Even if I felt disappointed in my own performance, I would be grateful that I had that experience, and now I learned something to know that the next time I'm going to be better. I'm going to be a better version of me.
There's tons of things to be, grateful for, the ability to be able to play when certain people can't, the ability to be able to go out and play when, certain countries have no chance of that because of either where they are or what's going on in their country at the time. Like, there's tons of things to be grateful for. And like I said, it's a disappointment within myself. It's not a general disappointment with
with others.
With others, there is a disappointment with others when it comes to certain societal issues, but it's just, that is the biggest thing where I find disappointment, is places where I can be better and then either don't meet the expectation that I have in my head. I'm very grateful for all the things that I get. I think it's just I've gotten caught up in too much of the wanting to, like you were saying, be better every single time. And I see the disappointment. I feel that disappointment when I don't reach what I'm supposed to or what I feel I can.
Feel like what you're capable of. And for sure, there's a level of that is very, very healthy. If it's not, when it gets in the way of, one, it's not realistic. And if it gets in the way of actually experiencing joy, it's kind of like what people say of ignorance is bliss. Right?
Yeah.
If you didn't know you sucked, right, you'd feel just fine about it.
You feel just fine.
Right? So it's kind of the burden of being human, is having a level of consciousness to know, hey, like, I'm terrible at that, right? I'm wrapping up because little man just booked it up the stairs, so I'm pretty sure he's about to attack me. That being Gravy, which I think his head actually popped up a couple of times here.
Oh yeah.
Everyone watching. So, Will, thank you so much for engaging and enduring this conversation of disappointment. The very idea of it, I feel like, is probably one of the more complicated things that we've talked about.
Oh, wait till the next one.
Wait till the next one. They actually springboard off each other. I think, for sure. So, of course, stay tuned for a bit of a continued conversation. Same amazing attitudes, probably the same shirts for the next episode, which actually will be the idea of letting go. Again, Will, thanks for joining and engaging in this conversation. Of course, if you want to touch base with me for advancement advising, you can do so at j-tm.community. If you want podcast specific stuff, just add /podcast and it'll get you to all of those things. Social media links, top right-hand side. If you enjoy our content, if you enjoy Will's smiling face and mild pessimism on the occasion, please don't hesitate to hit that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. What's that, Will?
Mild pessimism?
I would say mild.
I'm frothing with it.
Your disappointment in your level of pessimism.
Disappointed in my pessimism.
You gotta up your game. Again, thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone who has tuned in, listened, or watched, and for being part of a community where you belong.